Growing up, the word diversity was never a part of my vocabulary. Until junior year of high school, it wasn't even a word that was introduced to our classes. I was raised in Eureka, Illinois, a town of 5,222 people with a very limited racial composition. 95.63% of our population is white, which meant that our school didn't display a diverse community whatsoever. When thinking back to the students in my school and class, I only knew of 2 students that spoke another language other than English, but that didn't really mean anything to me then. I thought that it was cool that they could speak a language other than the one I knew, but I never thought about the struggles that they faced when it came to their education. One of my best friends in high school predominantly spoke Spanish and frequently struggled with content that was easy to me. I never understood what was so hard for her to understand until coming to college. Now that I know all the different accommodations ESL students need and deserve, I realized she was not being appropriately advocated for. Because there was a very small need for an ESL program, there was never one implemented into my school and still to this day is non-existent. It reminded me why I was getting my endorsement and how I want to make sure that all of my students in my classroom are advocated for and are never left to struggle alone. When my junior year hit, I started going on more and more missions trips. I ended up going to the Dominican Republic 4 different times before I graduated high school, which really opened my eyes. When seeing the schools the students were in, I realized how little they had in regards to resources and how fortunate we were in the States. There weren't even floors to some of the buildings at the schools, and there were no bookshelves or extra resources available. This was when I started realizing that there was a lot more to life than just the town I was born in. I took Spanish in high school for 4 years, but nothing prepared me for the conversations people would try to have with me in the DR. I would struggle so much with even coming up with a simple sentence, it would get so flustered because all I wanted to do was have a meaningful conversation with the people there. It made me start to sympathize for all of the non-native speakers that would visit or move to the United States and have a language barrier in their way. It's oftentimes easy to get annoyed with people not speaking the same language as you, but that is in no way fair to those people, especially when you don't know their story. When I graduated from high school, I moved down to Mexico for 3 months, and my eyes were open to so much more than I had even realized I could explore. I tutored 2 children I was a caregiver for and realized that the ways in which they were taught were so different than the ways students were taught here. Because they don't have as many resources as us, it limited a lot of what the teachers could do. The students didn't get to watch movies, go on field trips, try out new activities, etc. because their teachers didn't have those things available to them. Because students were doing the same things over and over each year, it blocked them off from being able to adjust their routines as much as they potentially could have. Going off of this, school was of course important, but not as important as things like working and providing for their families. Many of the children would have to get their chores done before anything else took place in the household. I learned so much about the ways in which the schools were run, but also about their culture. I actually had my own truck there, which made it so easy to go into town and create relationships with the people there. Doing this showed me how different cultures can be and how uncomfortable you can sometimes feel when you're the odd person out. This made me realize that wherever I teach, not all of my students are going to come from the same place. I would then later realize that this would play a role in the ways I taught my lessons and created my classroom atmosphere. When I moved back home, I started school at Bradley University and was placed at Northmore Primary School. This year was full of growth for me because I was not only surrounded by a diverse group of people at school, but also in my placement. The students there were all from different backgrounds and were at completely different proficiency levels. Some of them could read stories on their own, while some of them could barely read basic sight words. This was the first time I had ever heard of accommodating to students' needs or had been introduced to the idea of catering my lesson plans to certain students. The summer after my freshman year, I lived in New York for the summer and worked with kids from the foster care system and juvenile services. I had anticipated working with a younger group of children, but was then placed with a group of middle school girls. This summer completely changed my career path and showed me what I truly wanted to do. Even though we were all raised in the same country, these girls were so different from me. The ways they valued school, family, their career, etc., altered so much from mine and made me realize that no matter where I went, my students would all have different beliefs and be raised by different families and parents. This was one of the most important lessons I learned because I realized how important it is to be open-minded as a teacher since we are supposed to be our students' biggest advocates. When I got back to school, I then switched to middle school English education and was placed at Harrison Learning Center. From this placement, I realized the importance of a comfortable atmosphere. The students I worked with were all from Mexico and had moved to Illinois in the last year or two. These students were very timid with me at first and had to warm up to me and realize that our class was a safe zone for them. Through this course and watching the different observation videos, I've learned how important it is to not only give our students the resources necessary, but also make sure they're able to explore their education in a comfortable environment. Although I wasn't able to attend my placement this semester, this course has still been very beneficial. With everything going on, it turned into a very reflective class for me and one I was able to really put all of my experiences and practice together in. I've been able to look back and see how much I've grown since high school and how much awareness I now have of cultural differences, diversity, and accommodations needed for my students. As we've learned in all of our ESL courses, every student is different, therefore every school year will be different. The experiences I've had over the last few years and the opportunities I've had at Bradley University have taught me so much about myself, but most importantly, how I want to impact my students as a future teacher.